Hey, this is Dr. Fred Troxel, and you're watching the Breast Practices Show.
Well, this is how things go with my good friend Fred, like a little bit of a slip. I'm like best practices, and he said the other word that had an R in it, but that's how our relationship works. So I am so crazy grateful. Wait, you guys are in for a huge treat. Thanks for tuning in to the Best Practice Show, where we take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practice all over the world. And I am going to have so much fun in the next 45 minutes to an hour, whatever, with one of my favorite dentists of all time, who scared the hell out of me years ago when I first met him, the barefoot dentist, Dr. Fred Troxel. Today, we're going to be talking about the self-managing team and the keys to it and how he did it. And you do not want to miss this. So do me a favor, just grab a pen and hit the share button. You're going to love this. Now, couple show notes. We are shooting this live on Facebook. So as you're tuning in, and I can see Dr. Chris Ramsey's watching right now. What's up, Ramsey? So, as you're tuning in, ask questions and add them to the feed, and I'll ask Dr. Troxel himself. And this guy has had an incredible journey in dentistry with some of the best minds ever, and you're going to see it's pretty amazing ride here. And also, keep sending us suggestions for shows. We are now up for 39,000 followers on Facebook, over 150,000 of you listen on iTunes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't even know how that works, but all I can say is thank you. Now, my guest today, Dr. Fred Troxel, practices in Big Pine Key, and he's a legend in Florida. If you ever were in Florida, you go to any meetings, you go to the FACD meeting, which is an incredible meeting. You're going to meet this guy, his friends, just a great group of people to be around. Now, I know who you are. A lot of people know who you are, but if people don't know who Dr. Fred Troxel is, give us a little perspective on who you are.
Well, I'm just a guy banging away down in the Keys, right near Key West. So it's living the dream down here because it's a spectacular place to practice for a lot of reasons. Number one is I love to get wet, and we're surrounded by water. It's a glorious place to live. In fact, as soon as we get off the phone here, I'm going to go dive some lobster for dinner. So that's, what could be better than that kind of stuff. When I first came here, my father thought I was nuts because there was only about 1,200 people living on this island, and he thought I was going to have to trade fish for fillings. But this is back in '76 when I landed here. And of course, I wasn't out of school very long, and my skill level wasn't that high, of course. And so I grew into it with the help of a lot of great mentors, you being one of them along the way. And so as my skills have grown, the population grew and the demand for dentistry grew. And so now it's pretty great.
Sounds like it's the hood there now. What's going on?
No, yeah, well, it is amazing. It really is.
It is. And now you went there originally. I can't remember. Was it Sea Camp that brought you there? I mean,
yeah.
Yeah. So, and you just fell in love with the water and.
Well, I was a marine biology, an aspiring marine biologist. So in high school, there was this thing called Sea Camp on Big Pine Key, and I came down to act as first as a camper in 1965, then as a counselor, then a waterfront director, and finally as a scientist. And then the draft called, and I went to dental school. Mm-hmm. Which turned out to be one of the most fortuitous things that ever happened, because truthfully, I don't think there's anything that I could do as well as being a dentist, as far as just the whole spectrum of me. It just fits, and it just turned out unbelievably well. If I'd have been a marine biologist, I don't know, I'd probably be a shrimp farmer in Nicaragua right now or something. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? How do you know what happens when something... Right. You come to the crossroads.
And I would argue you're good at a lot of things. You are a 3-time world champion bone fisherman, which is not easy to do. You're tarpon fishing. You do a lot of things well. And one of my favorite things, and I was joking about this beforehand, when I came to visit you the first time, you're like, come on out. Like, we hung out and we were pulling, crabs, cracking them, you drinking Coronas, watching the sun go into the water. And I'm like, this is terrible. You get to look at this every day. He goes, every day I look at this. And then, you were back, that was back in the day when you had microscopes in your office and barefoot. Now, I had heard you were barefoot dentist, and people were like, you can't practice barefoot, but you still practice barefoot today, right?
Yeah, I have. And, being known as the barefoot dentist, it's a little troublesome because when you first hear it, it sounds like an affectation that I do it for effect. And it didn't. I was living upstairs. The building has the office and my house. And for 17 years, I lived upstairs. And, a Florida boy, you only had two pairs of shoes. One you wore to church and school, and the other was a pair of sneakers. The rest of the time you were barefoot. So yeah, I'd walk downstairs to come to work and never wear shoes. So I think initially my wife was working with me, my wife at the time, and she said, "This one looks a little stuffy. You better put some shoes on." Yeah. And that went away pretty quickly. And so here it is 40 years later and never worn shoes.
That's awesome. So, well, you're living the dream. One of your best friends is Jimmy Buffett, played at your wedding. Like, I want to hang out with you all the time. Like, and you keep joking, we got to get together, and I am going to find my way in. Now, a couple things, Fred, I want you to talk about your journey in dentistry, because today we're going to be talking about the self-managing team. But you didn't just wake up and this happened. You've been through a ton of hurricanes, like the one most recently devastating, put a ton of water on you. You also have lived 9 lives building this team, learning what you've learned. You've kind of figured it out a little bit. I'm just going to add these so people get a perspective of who you're listening to. Again, one of my heroes in dentistry. You work 8 to 2, four days a week. You take 10 weeks off. And again, it's not super easy. You've worked hard to get to this point. If I'm a young dentist, Fred, what would you tell me about your journey in dentistry and what you've learned along the way?
Wow. It might have been 20 years ago, Steve Chase, who was a dentist in Miami, had something to do with the Miami Midwinter meeting, and he asked a number of us that were maybe 20 years out of school what our perspective was and what we would tell young dentists just coming out of school. So it was interesting to get together with a couple people. Bruce Shaw was one of them, and Carlos Interian, really, some good dentists from Miami. And I think one of the things I said is I'd hire more consultants and listen to them less, which was an interesting thing because some consultants were like some dentists. They do an exam and say, you need a crown on this. It's not like they discover who you are and what you're about and what you believe and what you value. They just plug in their formula. You and I had discussions, arguments over certain numbers and things like this that you just have to think. You can't accept, and not that your numbers were wrong. They just work in various ways, and I just had an issue with them in terms of the way I looked at things. But I think it's choose mentors. I got down here in 1976. That's after being out of dental school in 73, and I worked in an HMO for 2 years. I thought I was a socialist, and as a hippie socialist, and I thought that healthcare was a right and blah blah blah. And so then I kind of grew up and decided I wanted to be as far away from government as possible. And I took a year off traveling around from the Virgin Islands to Hawaii, trying to figure out where I wanted to live. We lived in Breckenridge, Colorado for 6 months, and I skied every day and tried to see if I wanted to live in a ski town. And I don't ever want to be cold, so I'm not moving there. And I knew the Keys, and so came back here. Mm-hmm. And I landed here, and the dentist in Key West, there was no dentist between Marathon and Key West, which is about 50 miles. So I was instantly a success. The guys in Key West were kind of older guys that had been in the military or something like that, and really weren't working at it. They were filling their days, but they weren't thinking and doing. And I'm a little bit more restless than that. But I thought I was good because they were pretty crappy. Mm-hmm. And then I saw a lot of dentistry that we all do that just was like, holy crap, this wasn't what I was taught in dental school. Mm-hmm. I think I went to Tennessee, and I came out of there feeling pretty good about clinical dentistry. But then I went in a number of years, let's see, how many years later? It was almost 6 years later or something. I went to see Bill Straub, his course. Somebody told me I had Bill Robbins, who you've had on your show, who was mm-hmm. one of my classmates, is one of my heroes. What a great guy.
And I didn't realize this. You guys were in dental school together, right?
Same class. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he knew my first wife very well. They went to Arkansas to college together. So I've tracked him down around the country and this and that. He's been down here to fish, you know. But he said, you got to see Strupp. So I go and I look at the screen and I look at that stuff and I went, oh man, I really suck. You know, I thought I was good, but that's what I want to do. So that's when it took off. I heard Strupp said something about fishing, so I knew he liked to fish. So I keep sending him pictures of me with a fish saying, you weren't here, I had to catch it for you. And so finally he calls, he said, okay, I'm coming down. Well, then we just became really good friends because of our love to laugh, basically totally irreverent sense of humor and things, and then a desire to do things as well as they can be done. And Strupp's a maniac, you know that. He just crazy man. And then at the same time, I met Jim and Naomi Rohde and McDougal. What's his name? Tom McDougal.
Tom McDougal. Mm-hmm.
From Dallas. All right. Took a course in Phoenix with them, and it was like, oh, this is about team building, communications, and it took off on stuff. But here's a weird thing. When I was at the HMO, I was in Rochester, New York. I worked for Avram King, but he was writing dental currents, cross currents, team currents, like some newsletters. And all I did was write some technical reviews of dental materials because I was kind of a materials junkie. And I didn't fully appreciate Avram or anything. And then he went sideways up there and then resurfaced later in Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And I finally, got together and took some of his courses. So, of course, he became a mentor through Sandy and Doug Roth, who I really fell in love with. Sandy and Mary Osborne. And now Terry Goss has been a very close friend for a long time. She works with my team. Every one of them has an hour-long conversation with her or Janice, her partner, once a month. Everybody, it's just I pay a retainer and they talk. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the self-managing. Self-managing means I don't have to do it. They do it with a little help. Mm-hmm. And my basic philosophical overtones. But that philosophy was a long time in developing. So the advice for younger people or anybody is find the mentors that seem copacetic with what you believe and what you do. Mm-hmm. And then go to school on that. And when I first saw you came and spoke to our study club in Miami maybe 20 years or more ago. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And all your stuff was you pulled from all the giants. These were all your mentors, the LD Pankeys and the Pete Dawsons and Wilson Southam became a close friend. I named my first son Wilson because of him. So it's pulling from these. There's really some heavy freaking wisdom out there, not just clinical. Too many people get caught up in that, but you got to have the product on the shelf, but then you really got to know how to relate to people in order to sell it and have a team, right? That is geared for service. I mean, it's learned from the Ritz-Carlton and the people that are exemplary in the service department. And now I've got a few people that are consultants in business, and they use us as an example of a very highly driven, service-oriented organization. Which is right. I'm quite proud of that.
Well, let me add some color to this because Big Pine Key isn't a huge place of dental talent that's just sitting around waiting to find the right home. There have been many times over your career where you're like, look, I got to find a dental team member here. You don't have a ton to choose from, right? Like you're going to have to find the right person, develop them over time. Like how did you do that? And you've had some challenges too in the past, right? Yeah,
almost never have I been able to hire somebody by putting an ad in the paper or finding them that way. Then right now, and for the past number of years, I think it's been they come to me. People. An assistant will come to the Keys and looking for a job, ask around, and the ones that are savvy and want a rewarding experience will come here. And sometimes I have hired them just because they were great, even though I didn't need anybody. Mm-hmm. But I'd rather run heavy than run light. It's cheaper for me to run heavy with staff than it is to run light, because I think if you lose people or miss an opportunity or anything like that, it's hard to add up the costs of that.
Right. Now, I have to ask you, I know you well enough that you are super picky. You do not like good sometimes is not, well, not sometimes is not good enough. You are very picky about the way things. How do you manage expectations with teams? Because it's got to be about expectations when people come in. You can't, I'm sure you don't say to them, hey, that's good enough. Good try. Like, how do you do that with new team members coming into your culture?
That is funny. I tried that today.
Work? What?
No, they got after me for saying something was good enough.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I can't think of.
Are you softening as you get older, or what?
No, I don't. I don't know what it was. I can't even remember right now. But it was. Bonnie did something happened, and I said, "Well, it's okay. It's the end of the day. I had time to mess around." And Shelley, my dental assistant, says, "No, it's never good enough. That's never okay." And so I was like, you are right. Thank you. That's what I mean. I think I've driven it in terms of that perfection to where now they hold me accountable to my words.
Well, how do you create that? Are you just talking core values all day or constantly reinforcing the themes, or how do you do that?
It's all about, it's always relates to the philosophy. I've always said that. It's not challenging the individual whenever something goes on. It's a question of, all right, what's the philosophy? All right, what happened? All right, how do those two mix? Do we want to revisit the philosophy, or do we just want to change this behavior to make this work?
Right.
And so every time, I mean, Terry Goss has given us a killer debrief model that's, what was the original plan? What happened? How could it be different next time? What would the impact be? That kind of thing. And so they live this. They live this thing. So I think there's some tools to make things happen, but overarching, it's me not willing to relinquish the pursuit of excellence, in all things. Right. And we used to start team meetings with a service story of something out in the world, good or bad, that we had a service experience that either met our expectations or exceeded them or didn't. Mm-hmm. And most of the ones in the medical world vastly undermet our expectations. It's just abysmal the way we're treated out there in the world today. So I think we stand out without too much effort, even though everybody gets the juice of doing it. We love feeling good about what we do. And I think the guys walk out of here every day proud about what they do. Right.
And I try to tell everybody, even kids getting in this, it's not the top that's crowded. It's the bottom that's crowded with too much. And so the opportunity is up there. Now, I want to go back to the topic self-managing. I want you to define that. And I also don't want people to watch this and go, he just comes in and does dentistry. That's not true. You do spend time talking with your team, but define self-managing at this point in your career. And I also want you to tell the story in the most recent hurricane, which you guys got clobbered, and what they did during that time that would articulate that.
I jokingly sort of said that as far as having a self-managing team, because I really don't feel like I do a lot. We have a team meeting for an hour and a half every 2 weeks. Every afternoon, they have a debrief session. The team does it. And it started a while ago for them debriefing the schedule. How can we do the schedule better? And it just morphed into every little thing. So they never go home with anything unsaid, unspoken, undealt with, which is an incredible thing. And they are addicted to it themselves. They wouldn't stop it. I stand there in the door sometimes and listen and think, wow, they got this. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, as I said, they do work with Terry Goss and Janice Despartie. Every one of them talks to her once a month for an hour at least. And they go over scenarios of conversations with clients or roadblocks within their team member. They might even do it with their husband or something like that. And it's all about communication skills that are, just classic active listening and staying in the question kind of stuff. And all these things, this training that we've done has made them more effective at being with people and more effective at being with each other.
Right.
So when I say self-managing, I think it's because I really don't have to get into too much of that. Other than in our meeting, it's more of me. We talk about our overall philosophy and what do we believe and what are we doing and who were the patients we're attracting, and how are we going about that, and how are we serving them, and things that took me a long, long time to develop. I think I went up the wrong road in a lot of places, much like we can do that clinically, get off in the wrong track with something, because as you know, in the practice management, there's a lot of BS thrown around out there in it, and a lot of patronizing BS, and nothing competes with making people feel valued, wanted, listened to, and heard.
Absolutely.
That's the central thing of what we do, and I run a little heavy in terms of people. So there's always people on people. I try to have always somebody answering the phone. I hate the phone machine, but sometimes you just gotta. Everybody's engaged being with people. But you look at the best hotels in the world. What is their ratio of guests to staff? Staff is way up there. Just always is. Yeah. So you just have to do it.
Right. And you're also getting patients that are driving a long way. I mean, again, you're not blessed with a huge population of people. They're coming. They're also making an informed decision. They have to reach in their pocket because you don't participate with insurance. Like, that's not an easy road. That's a harder road. It requires heavier levels of communication. You got to connect deeper with patients, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's it. As I said, making them appreciate help them. Sometimes Wilson Southam had it long time ago. His group at Cox, their whole thing was accepting people where they are, and don't categorize them into low dental IQ or some idiotic phrase like that. It's accept them where they are, and then help them grow. But most of it's helping them even look at themselves, their own values. What do they value? What do they want? And oftentimes they come to the decision themselves that they want a higher level of service. Strupp always said, it's cocky stuff that I love, but I'm not sure how it flies sometimes. I'm not sure I could do it myself. Genuinely.
You don't shoot the messenger all that well, or you would have shot me years ago. You're willing to listen to the good.
Oh yeah, cocky doesn't bother me at all. Anybody, can say anything. I've always wondered what would offend me.
We could try. But...
Stupidity does. Right. But he said, if money's important and rough for you, you can't afford to not have me do it because you can't afford to do it twice.
Wow. Yeah.
And so my team speaks to quality, and our fees might be a little higher or whatever. Yeah, insurance might not pay for it, but if you're doing this, you really want it done once, you want it done right. And we can teach you how to take care of things and be self-sufficient, and you will not have to do this dentistry again, kind of thing. So it's just spending the time with people and communicating. And it's the same thing. The staff has to spend time debriefing and talking. You can't just run out the door at 5. Bye.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's why I think you can be effective. And, years ago, Wilson Southam was talking about doing it was $1 million in those days in 1,000 hours. And I thought 1,000 clinical hours was what he thought a dentist should work. And I thought, you're out of your freaking mind. That's impossible. How do you do that? But that was when I was, I produced $250 an hour or something like that. I don't know. Well, then as I grew into it or discovered you don't have to be on a racetrack, you don't have to do it. You just have to do substantial dentistry and be effective and efficient at doing it. And then it's getting people to say yes to it is the hard part, right? For many people. Right. And appreciate the value of things. And so it's entirely possible. More than
possible. And I'm sure I made a million mistakes. I could do a 2-hour show on what not to do when you're trying to create a team. What are some of the valuable lessons you've had? How many years now? If you were with Robbins, how many years in dentistry have you now had? 4?
Well, we graduated in 73.
So that's quite a few years. Well, what are some of the lessons you'd say don't do this and definitely don't do this? When you look back at trying to build a great team.
Don't accept substandard behavior. Is one thing. It's find your philosophy of what you believe, and you might need help to do that.
Yeah.
And then hold the line.
Yeah.
just be true to yourself. If you believe this and truly believe it, then you need people who are with you, who are enrolled in it and believe it too. I mean, I don't see there's any substitute for that. How do you, all the relationships we're in, you need to be philosophically aligned in order to have a deep relationship. You can have friends that are that don't believe in your philosophy of things, and but as long as they're willing to engage and not polarize. That's one of the things that's so distressing of our world today, is the name calling and polarizing, and it's just not a dialogue that our Congress and Senate just can't have an across the aisle dialogue like used to be.
Right.
People used to enjoy the debate. I love a good debate, but be true to your philosophy and hold your team accountable. How you find them, I don't know. I really don't. I've been lucky. Right now, I've got such a great group that if I brought somebody in that didn't fit, they'd take care of that. They'd make them unpleasant enough to leave, but it's not going to happen,
Yeah. Do you let the team do most of the hiring and the hiring process when you were hiring people, or do you do that?
No, classically, I've done it because I just had such a solid feeling, and lately I guess I've been lucky and haven't been wrong because I've really had a super team, and I created this position of our word is client facilitator, because calling a patient a client, it describes a collaborative, collegial arrangement rather than a person you do something to.
Right.
That's my term for patient. And then a facilitator is more than a coordinator. It's somebody who is skilled in the art of facilitation, and that is helping people define their own values and their own choices and what they believe and what they're willing to do, and get down to the honest to God business of what it's all about. So I created this position over a long time with the help from Mary Osborne and Sandy Roth and Terry Goss and people like that. So I don't think there's many people out there that have a designated position in their office that's like this, but it's incredibly valuable. And so through various iterations of people that were there, every time something would happen. A long time ago, I had this really wonderful woman who was great at it, but I think she was a little sales oriented. She could sell things that then maybe there was a little buyer's regret.
Right.
So then a woman who had been a hygienist came back right simultaneously. Like, I keep getting rescued by things like that. Lisa came back, and she really drove it and created this position. She was masterful at it. And then she got remarried, and her husband took a job at Dean of Aviation at Purdue. So she left, and I was like, what do I do now? But luckily, my hygienist at the time stepped into it, and she has done marvelously, blowing it up and putting her own imprimatur on it also. Yeah. And so here I've had two incredible people help really drive this position and create it. And I think that has been a key to what we do, because she's the one that greets the new patients, sits with them for whatever time they need, from a half an hour to an hour. Then we do a clinical exam and just get a brief overview of what's going on. And then she's the one that really spends a lot more time in helping them understand things or feel it out. She's also she does the treatment plan presentation for the most part. I might come and answer questions, but she's got it. She knows dentistry, been in it a long time, and understands it. And then understands how to break it down and help them appreciate it based on what they're. So I don't experience any buyer's remorse anymore at all that I can feel, and then we're so good at rah, rah, rah all the way through it. I have assistants that are so love what we do and what we can do. And so there's a lot of excitement from anywhere. A guy today said he was a little skeptical and grumpy. He was in yesterday, and we just had this slot, and he needed a single unit crown. Tooth broke. So we slid him in and did it. And at the end of it, he said, I feel like I was at a party today with a bunch of people I like.
That's awesome. That's a good indicator.
Yeah, dentistry is just a minor annoyance, right? He says, yeah, it was great. So that's it. We just have fun here and laugh a lot and seriously do the work. Like, take no prisoners getting the work done, but
Right.
it's happy.
We try to help people. It's still a people business. I don't care what you do. It's always going to be a people business when you do this type of stuff, and it's critically important. So when you look, I'm always curious, like, as you've looked at this incredible journey in dentistry, you've been surrounded by some great people. You go to some great meetings. What are some of the trends you're seeing in dentistry? Not only with your patients, but with other clinicians. What do you see is going to be happening in the next couple of years, and what are dentists going to have to know in order to be continuously successul?
I still think it's all about relationships. You're never going to change that. No matter what technical piece of gear you put, how wow you got them. I believe it starts with the first phone call. And then my office, you remember, from the moment you drive into it off US 1, which is kind of a crappy looking street. Mm-hmm. It's, Big Pine is, it's not that. You think of the Keys, no, it's not that attractive. No. This ain't the beach. This is like a bad strip thing here and there, and boats on the highway. It's just not nice. But you drive into my place, and immediately the landscaping and coming up the ramp into the office, and then it's just it's nice everywhere. Mm-hmm. I've had really help with design, and I'm kind of a design junkie myself too, so lots of great artwork and making it nice, and so it speaks quality everywhere, keeping it spotless, keeping it clean, in every way. Everything has to be quality, and that's part of the fundamental philosophy, is a quality experience from the time they drive off the highway until the time they leave.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Now, you mentioned the team meeting. Are you still doing huddles, or you guys don't do huddles, or you do? I know you said you do the end of the day debrief. Like, give me a little perspective on how your day works if you're starting at 8 to 2.
Yeah, we have a 10-minute huddle starting at 8. So we start clinically at 8:10. So at 8, we just sit there, and it's basically looking over the schedule, and it's kind of people, the ladies have all done chart review of every patient, so they're kind of bringing up things that we're trying to focus on, think about, or is the patient in the middle of deciding something or not, or do they need reinforcement in somewhere? It's 10 minutes of bing, bing, bing. How do we get prepared for these people? And so they've already been thinking about them. The assistants are very good about chart review and knowing that we've got all the materials we need to do that. The custom trays are made, the shims are made, or what are we doing? Particulars about that patient's desires, whether they want nitrous or music, or they're going to need some nutrition in the middle of it, or whatever. That goes on. And they're really good. And then we start, and I work straight through to 2. And we try and wind it down. Sometimes you got to put a little something in there because a great patient's had something, the wheels fall off, or a friend of theirs or something. So we try and accommodate people as much as we can. But I don't usually get out of here too terribly late. And they stick around. The hygienists work a little later, and then they start their debrief. Sometimes they start that just before 4 or 3:30. They're out of here by 4:30. And I'm usually out of here. Sometimes I stick around, but most of the time in the summer, it's like having a whole day.
Yeah. So you're on a boat. You're on a boat by 3 at the latest.
No, 5, 4. But the sun doesn't go down till 8:30. Or nautical twilight is closer to 9. So I can come in when the last vestiges of light and pull up to the dock.
That's awesome. What do you say to people that say, hey, look, I got to work evening hours and Saturdays and all that kind of stuff? Because you're one of my classic examples. You did this so long ago. I even forgot you did it when you changed your hours and you created that type frame. What did you learn in that whole process instead of working long hours?
Well, here I am. How many years have I been doing this? A long time. I've been here since 76, so that's over 40 years here in this practice, which is a little stunning, but I'm still kind of like digging it, and I'm kind of fresh. I'm not burned out. I had other friends that I remember 20 years ago couldn't wait to retire, classmates or something. But you ask them how many days a year did you work? Oh, I don't know, 220 or something. I'd say, you're out of your mind. I went to see Omer one time, and he said it's taking the days you want to work or the hours you want to work, and then putting your overhead in there, and then you work your fees out backwards that way.
Mm-hmm.
You discovered how much per hour you have to produce to meet your goals, and okay, there you are. There was your fees. And so that was immensely helpful.
Right.
As figuring out, clearly defining how much I wanted to work. And 168 days was it. It's 42 4-day weeks.
Right. Now, the natural question I get all the time, I'm sure you might get this one. Okay, 10 weeks off. Your team, what do you give them 10 weeks off, or do you come up with some type of a schedule that they can work while you're gone?
Well, each one of them's on a yearly contract. They get a salary, so they get a check every 2 weeks whether they're working or not, which helps them budgeting and everything else. So some of them are on 190 days a year, so it's just different things. And truthfully, I don't even keep score. They do, and I trust them completely because things get done. If I'm looking around and saying, guys, the windows are looking a little crappy. What's the deal here? They're like, oh, and they figure it out. Mm-hmm. They work out a schedule. They come up with something, some way to get it done. Whatever. So I pay them, and that's backed into that 168 days means we got to produce this amount of money to cover the overhead, and that's the way it works. When the storm knocked us out of business we were already out for 2 weeks. I went to Burning Man again and resurfaced out of there. And my wife was in California because her daughter was having a baby. I was going to fly there for the baby. And she said, you got to go home. There's a hurricane coming. So oh, shit. So I flew home, and that's why I said I started working September 6th. The storm hit September 9th. I stayed in the house. Most everybody in the whole Keys evacuated except for a few people. But our house is solid. I didn't worry about it. Mm-hmm. But the Big Pine took the brunt of it. It took 40, 50 miles an hour wind. It put 8 to 12 feet of water over the whole island. So it did a crap load of damage. And probably I've spent over $500,000 putting the office back together. And we did it in 8 weeks. Everybody's like, what? You can't possibly do it. I said, yeah, I had the wet carpet out of there in 3 days. I had all the drywall torn down. That's 3,200 square feet in 8 days. I found this group of wonderful Honduran people in Key West that came up and just did it all. I wound up pulling in markers from friends and this and that. And I've been here so long, I've got a lot of patients who were air conditioning guys, plumbers, electricians, everybody kind of made it happen. And the staff was fabulous too. They worked the whole time too. And I paid them the whole time. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wanted them to be there when we were ready to go back to work. Plus, it felt like it was a team effort, and it really was a wonderful team building experience doing this, going through this adversity. And some of them had damage to their own homes and had things to do. So some of them were at home, others were here every day. So nobody questioned it. Everybody was working every minute of every day. That's just what you did.
Just do what you have to do.
Yeah. And a lot of people didn't have so much damage here. And so luckily our patients were ready to go. We had a lot of stuff in the pipeline that needed to get going.
Yeah. I got a question from one of our best question askers. His name's Deepak. He's awesome. How do you handle, Fred, the employee that used to be amazing, but now has become not such a good team player? What would you say to that?
Wow.
It's a good one.
Yeah, that is a really good question. I've had to deal with some people that were never quite team players, and as I developed the team, it was apparent that they just weren't communicative. They had some issues themselves that were deeper than anything we could deal with here and get along. So I finally had to, as hard as it was, let them go. And I've always thought of it in terms of, I want my team members to be successful. I want them to feel richly rewarded, both monetarily and internally, for what they do. And if I know I'm not providing that because they're not getting great strokes from everybody else, and it's probably not feeling good. So I'm doing them a disservice by letting them stay here, because they're better off going somewhere where they might thrive more or be in an environment that suits them better. As far as if somebody starts straying from the path, it's having the conversation. What can I do differently? What can we all do differently to help serve you better? Mm-hmm. It's helping. It's always better to listen to somebody than start off on a, hey, you're not.
Right.
Even though that's my shorthand sometimes.
Right. I mean, you found this to be true, though. If somebody's really good at what they do and then they're a little bit off, there's something deeper going on. And sometimes it might be personally, and then doing your best to help with that. But if you can't help it, we're not in the job of rehabilitating people long term. I mean, we want to give them an opportunity, but there's always something deeper, I've found.
Well, some people derail in their personal life.
Right.
And sometimes you have to cut people a little slack when they're, some people get into a divorce situation, which can be emotionally exhausting and physically and everything else just because of the nature of it. So somehow the group has to either help them or say, I don't know, we can't carry you any longer. You're going to have to pull your weight. I think it's all about honesty.
Yeah.
It's all about speaking your truth and being generous as possible and being generous of spirit, right? Giving people the benefit of the doubt and realize there's something deeper going on. Okay, well, how do we help them?
Yeah.
How do we help them perform at their maximum level? If they're not, what are we doing to not encourage that or help it happen?
Yeah, it's awesome, buddy. Any last thoughts you'd have on this topic, or when you look at the future of dentistry, you don't have any signs. You look great, by the way. You look healthy. You're happy. You're no signs of slowing down.
No signs. I'm turning 70 in the fall. I can't believe that. November 70.
I know.
What a deal.
What's your secret? What's your secret? Come on, everybody's got a secret.
Yeah, well, it's I've been try to eat well my whole life. Although new information comes up, like, oh crap, I haven't been doing it right. This is stunning to me. A new book just hit me the other day called The Plant Paradox. That's like, what? Another whack up the side of the head. And so that and exercise, staying active, staying happy. Mm-hmm. What else? Keep smiling, keep laughing, get lots of sunshine, and hang out with people you love.
Buddy,
the only thing missing is you.
I know. I promise you. I got a big crew now with all my family. I'm going to get them all down there.
That's what I said. That's why I don't call you. You've grown this organization to where.
No. Well, I'm talking about my family too. I got 3 teenage daughters now. I can't even believe myself.
Beautiful. They're gorgeous kids.
Thank God, my wife is beautiful. That's really.
Oh yeah, that's true too. You guys are the best.
Buddy, I'm so grateful for our time and like you. When we first met, I was like, oh man, I hope this guy. I remember. No, can I just tell one? I was telling a story about when Bob Barkley died or something like that. And then you corrected me with a piece of paper. I said he died in 1979 and you gave me a piece of paper at the break. You're like, no, I don't even remember what it was. You corrected me. You said 1972. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like
77.
It was 77 or something. And then we got into it was a debate. And then as soon as we got through, I was like, I love this guy. And then I come down and hang out with you. You cooked for me. Got a chance to hang out for a couple of days. And ever since then, it's been awesome. You've just been a blessing, man, and I'm so grateful.
To you. Yeah,
man, you are the best, buddy. We're going to have you back other times, talk about other topics, but, man, I am so grateful for having you on and thankful for our friendship. Stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else that's watching, and I know a bunch of you watching. Just thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today. If you did, just do us a favor, hit the share button. Hey, Fred, what's your website if people want to check out you? How can people find you?
Keysmiles.com.
Keysmiles.com. If you're ever in the Keys, go through Big Pine Key and just take that turn right. You will be blown away. Number one, it's exactly like you described. It's super fun. And if you could stay for a while, Fred will take you out on the boat, crack some crab, and then drink some Coronas and watch the sun go into the water, buddy. You're the best.
I'm going to get some lobster right now.
Buddy, you're the best. Well, cool. Well, guys, hey, until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practice Show. You guys have a great rest of your day.